Lexus has a bit of an image problem, in my opinion, in that some of its models are getting a little old.
Old?
And I don't mean old like your mom's new boyfriend who considers himself more established.
He has a 5-year plan.
I mean old in the sense that the CD player takes up significant real estate on the RX 450's center stack, which is certainly confounding to anyone with a TikTok. Does this mean that the RX 450h is not worth buying? Well, no, certainly not, but let's clarify a few things first. What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today I am with the 2022 Lexus RX 450h. You may or may not know this, but Lexus basically invented the concept of the luxury crossover vehicle way back in 1998. Before that, soccer moms had to sneak out to meet their tennis instructors in their minivans.
I'm a cool mom.
Back then, the Lexus RX was a revelation, and this RX 450 still bears resemblance to that patient zero of luxury crossovers that came out nearly 25 years ago. Sure, it's about as interesting as a head of lettuce, but it's also not the BMW XM concept.
No, I spit acidic vomit. Oh.
Which is what happens when Germans have spent far too much time indoors thanks to the pandemic. Or at least I think it is.
The Germans.
This Blackline edition certainly helps, giving the RX 450 you see here a little bit more of that kind of stormtrooper vibe.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
With its black wheels, black mirrors, and black trim, but ultimately it's the same luxury crossover that we've come to know and know from Lexus. Motivating this RX 450h is a 308 horsepower V6, pumping out 247 pound-feet of torque with a little assist from the electric motor. Power runs through a CVT automatic and is then distributed through all-wheel drive. Is it fast? Well, no, not really. Not unless you think outrunning a glacier sounds like too much of a physical challenge for you. However, it is pretty fuel efficient. We saw about 30 miles per gallon in very mixed driving with some around town suburban stints as well as a long highway journey. And that's pretty good for a vehicle of this size. But speaking of driving, well, I didn't get a chance to film my driving impressions separately, but I can tell you this, the RX 450h is soft, like really soft, like softer than a Build-A-Bear workshop hosting a My Chemical Romance fan meetup.
I want my painting back.
On the handling road, it never really felt settled. The ride is incredibly comfortable, but it never quite stops moving as it tries to iron out all of the bumps and dips and rough surfaces. The primary controls are fine, the steering actually isn't too incredibly light, and the brake pedal has decent feel for a hybrid, but the ride is so biased towards comfort that any semblance of handling is sort of gently rocked away, as if the RX 450 is trying to erase your memory and make you forget that handling was ever a thing in the first place. Unfortunately, the RX is kind of average in cargo carrying capability as well, holding just 16 cubic feet of your children's lacrosse gear behind the second row. Now, to be fair, the cargo space feels bigger than that, and much of the trade-off sort of goes to rear seat space, and it's also an after effect of the shape of the RX 450's kind of rear roofline and hatch. So it's not an unwelcome trade-off. However, it is worth noting that the far more stylish and somewhat smaller Genesis GV70 holds 29 cubic feet of cargo behind its second row. Now, the trade-off there is that the GV70's rear seat is not as spacious as the RX 450's. But in that case, the GV70's interior kind of makes up for it. Speaking of interiors, I generally like the interior of the RX. The seats are comfortable and soft, the leather feels nice, and most of the controls are very intuitive, except the infotainment trackpad, but to be honest, I'm really not all that bothered by it. This one is equipped with the new 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment system, which is very nice, even though it's starting to get a little long in the tooth. And I like it, but even at my height, 6'6", when I have the seat where I want it, it's like a bit of a reach, actually, for me to touch the screen, and I'm sort of forced to use the trackpad. You get heated and cooled seats in this trim, and I've always enjoyed the fact that Lexus has like an auto mode that sort of dials in just the right amount of heating or cooling, depending on the ambient temperature. Chill. Unlike many of my Lexus testers, this one does not have the Mark Levinson audio system. It has an upgraded 12-speaker audio system, which is pretty bass heavy and kind of takes me back to my high school days when everybody had a giant wooden box with a subwoofer in the trunk of their car.
I don't want your life.
It also has a surround view camera, but oddly, Lexus's rear camera quality, the main camera, is not super good, even though the image from the surround view camera seems more kind of high def. So I think they need to update that rear mounted camera. It's a nice place to be, it really is. Everything feels well put together and all the touch points are incredibly kind of soft and luxurious, but it lacks that sort of sense of occasion that you get from something like the GV70 or the GV80 or most of the German brands. And that's really kind of the problem here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the Lexus RX 450h in the objective sense. It looks decent, it drives well enough and rides well enough for most people, at least most sane people, and it'll likely be stupendously reliable. But are all those really compelling reasons to buy one? You want to feel like you need one, not that you've sort of settled for one. Yeah, I'm not really sure that's enough, and there's two main reasons why. First, while the Lexus RX 450h starts at just under 50 grand, as you see it here, this model with the Blackline edition costs just over 60 grand. A fully loaded Genesis GV70 costs around 64 grand and is pretty much cooler in every single way. Financed out over, 9,000 months or whatever people are doing these days, that's a pretty negligible difference on a monthly basis. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum. A fully loaded Kia Sorento costs about $15,000 less than this RX 450 and rings in at about $45,000. It's also cooler looking than the RX 450, nearly as nice inside, has better infotainment, and is cooler looking than the RX 450. For my money, I'm picking one of those two options. I'm either splurging on the Genesis GV70, or I'm gonna pocket the 15 grand, take the Kia Sorento, and then take that Kia Sorento on an absolutely epic Disney vacation. And if you watch this channel, you already know that's the option I'm gonna pick. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video sort of informative and useful. Don't get me wrong, make no mistake, the Lexus RX 450h is an absolutely great luxury SUV. I just think that there are some pretty amazing options out there that give you a lot from your money, either from a performance standpoint or from a value standpoint. And I'm not sure the RX 450 currently in its current form is offering you enough in exchange. The next generation is due soon. We'll probably see it next year, so stay tuned here, and when we see it, we'll be right back to give you kind of a rundown of that one. We'll see how it stacks up. Anyway, ride safe, drive safe. I will catch you in the next review. All right, peace. No matter where I stand, I managed to be in a flight path of incredibly slow-moving aircraft. Pretty sure the Lexus RX 450 is faster than that plane. Oh, how did we ever win World War II?